Yeah. Today we're going to talk about some awesome lessons. Lessons that I think are important, 3 of them, to teach your kids, okay, while they're young especially, because I think if we can start seeing this when we're young, that it will help us when we become adults as well. Get started, I want to help you be aware of something that my dad taught me in approaching and working with people who are younger than you, okay, so like your children, because there's such a difference when you actually get on their level versus like, you know, when you're talking down to them, you know, or even if you're trying to not even scold them, but you're trying to have a heart to heart, you're talking down to them. It's just so much better when you're eye level with them. So get down on their level or bring them up to yours. Let them stand on a chair or a table. Or bend down, okay? Sit in a chair or sit next to them, whatever it is. Make sure that you are defining yourself as an equal with them, okay? And that you're just teaching them a simple lesson to help them get through life. Okay, so now that you have the approach down, let's move on to the 3 lessons, okay? The first lesson is not to project pain. The second is to recognize when you are wrong. And the third is to give up being right. Okay, so let's talk about each one of those and what they mean and how to teach your kids those things. So the first one, to stop projecting your pain. You guys, it is so human nature, no matter what age you are, to project our hurt, our pain, our anger, our fear, our frustration onto other people that maybe weren't involved in the original interaction. The best example that I can think of for kids that I think happens for every single kid is, say they get in trouble with their parents. Maybe the way that interaction went down wasn't so great. And what happens is that they leave their parents and then they go interact with their siblings. And maybe they take it out on their younger brother or sister. That is like the most common, typical thing that I see with kids. And I think it's important to point that out to kids to help them to see, look, you were feeling this way and then you went and took it out on your brother or sister that's younger than you. And helping them see that it actually takes bravery and courage to not do that. It takes bravery and courage to sit in the emotion and to figure out if what you're feeling is something you can do something about, okay? Like if there's a truth being spoken about you that doesn't feel good, because it's human nature for us to deflect that like a trampoline. Like we don't want anything to do with it, so we're just gonna shove that onto someone else and we're not gonna deal with it. But instead, it's so much more powerful if we can sit in the emotion and recognize maybe there's somebody that we need to apologize to, or maybe we're needing to learn something about ourselves that a behavior maybe that we need to correct, and it hurts. So instead of actually correcting it, we make it worse. So it's just being able to see that if in the circumstance you can see that your child would have been feeling a certain way from a certain interaction, and then they took those emotions and carried it over into another situation, that is what you want to point out. You want to point out where the behavior went wrong, instead of taking the bravery and courage that it takes to stand up and be a really good person inside of you, and to figure out what you need to do about it. One of the best examples for parents that I think that this happens is our patience, right? So many times when we're running late, it's actually our fault, but who do we take it out on? We take it out on our kids. Hurry up, get in the car, all that business. That's just another way that it shows up. Another way that it showed up for me is one day I was in Target with my kid. This is not something that I'm proud of, but I treated the employee badly, and I think it was just a frustration because they didn't have something that I needed or something just ridiculous, and I treated the employee badly, right? And as we walk away, my son says to me, and kudos to him, he said, "Mom, why did you act like that? Why did you do that to him? It's not his fault." And I'm like, oh my gosh, you are so right and so wise, and it's so true. But the minute that we want to deflect that and not make that true and do something about it is where we really are wrong. It takes bravery and courage to stand up and in the moment say, yeah, that was wrong, right? So that is, and we have to be grateful for our family members for helping us and correcting us and putting us back on the path of the way that we really want to be, right? So imagine that's something that's so powerful for adults, but imagine learning that lesson and being talked through it when you were a kid, and then being able to see it over and over and over as you kind of go throughout your life because you had talked about it with your parents. So powerful. Okay, you guys, let's talk about number 2, recognizing when you're wrong. If we can teach our kids that when they see that they are wrong, to actually say sorry and do something about it, then the time in which they realize that they did something wrong, when they were mean or grumpy or whatever towards someone, and the time when they actually realize it and feel bad and feel like they should do something about it, if they're willing to do something about it in that moment, then the time of realization and the time when they have the action to do something about it grows shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, to the point where you might even get to the point where you recognize, like, immediately, like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, and you can apologize right away. Or sometimes, because you recognize it sooner and sooner and sooner, then you might recognize it in the very moment. You might be able to even prevent it from happening. But that only happens because we are willing to do something about it. When we say to ourselves, I really don't want to hurt people, and I'm going to recognize when I'm wrong, and I'm going to do something about it without even being asked to do something about it. And I think that that's really important to teach our kids. As adults, we don't really have very many people in our life that are telling us, like, hey, you need to say sorry, or you did something wrong. And as kids, they're constantly being told, you need to tell your brother you're sorry. and maybe we can train them in a way to where they are just going to wait until they're told they need to say they're sorry, right? And what we really want to be training them to do is to see it for themselves and do something about it before they're told to do something about it. So that is such a great way to change that behavior and to help them to be humble. Okay, guys, let's talk about number 3, giving up being right. And I'm going to give you an example that I found in my journal from a while back, and it happened with one of my children, who I'm not going to name. Okay, but we were driving, and when we were driving, we were singing a song. And as we were singing the song, I totally botch it, and my son lets me know. He says, Mom, you were singing the words wrong. And I say, I know, buddy, I don't really know the song very well. I need your help. Can you help me with the words? And he said, this was his reply, no joke. Yes, Mom, but you got the words wrong. You don't know the words. Like, he was so fixated on being right that he couldn't see that I was even asking for help. He couldn't even see that, because we get so blinded when we want to be right. And it's just human nature. It's what we all do. But, teaching this behavior to them when they're young and trying to, see it will probably help them as they become adults and they're trying to correct these everyday things that we go through as adults, right? So I think even just that tiny example of being able to say, look, we've got to give up being right, even if we are right? It doesn't mean that the other person can't be right as well, because from their vantage point, from their viewpoint, maybe they are. So using little circumstances to help dissect. After my son said those words to me, we sat down and we had a conversation. I talked to him about giving up being right. We talked about, hey, buddy, did you realize that Mom said, I'm sorry, I got the words wrong. I need your help. Did you even realize that? And he didn't. He didn't realize, because he was so fixated that he knew the words and I didn't, right? And sometimes that's just what happens. You guys, this is such a tiny little example of giving up being right, but sometimes when you can see it, especially in situations that happen with kids, it feels like they can be illustrated so easily. So you guys, with all of these behaviors, it is just something that we as adults are always facing as well. And we're constantly molding ourselves and having to take a step back and evaluate what behaviors we can get better at, or what we want to change or fix. And that's just human nature. That's just life. That's what we're here for, right? But imagine if you could start seeing those things when you were young. If you started having those conversations when you were just tiny, how empowering that could be. If your parents could break it down for you on a level that you could understand when you were little. So it is a hope for mine that we can start focusing on behaviors for our kids and helping them understand, versus just in the situation, who did you hit, what did you do, and you're in trouble, bam. If we can help them evaluate the behaviors of what got them there in the first place, then we will be able to help mold these tiny little people into really amazing humans, right? You guys, I hope you like this video. I hope it empowers you in your parenting. If you guys want more messages like this to help you live happy and be inspired, all sorts of things, little tidbits on parenting, and all sorts of things, then subscribe. I would love to have you guys along for the journey. I'll see you guys next week.